What was the scariest encounter you have ever had? I was walking to the shops at night and they were only a 2-minute walk away, so I just left my shorts on although it was a winter's night. I was walking down an alleyway and a massive black guy stopped me and just stated in his Jamaican accent, "Beware the white devil that feels no cold," and walked off into the darkness. Never seen him before and never seen him again. This isn't as hardcore as other stories here, but here goes. During my first week of lifeguarding in 2005, 15 years old, I pulled an unconscious child, 7, from the bottom of the pool. It was during swim team practice. I was technically on duty, but allowed to practice. Half the pool was reserved for the team with lane lines. 3 guards in the chair, kids swimming everywhere. On my second lap of some drill, I saw this kid at the bottom of the pool. Fresh out of training, I thought I should check on him to see if he wasn't just messing around. As I got close, I saw he had vomit or something coming out of his mouth and nose. I picked him up, screamed "blow the whistle" to the head lifeguard, and brought him to the side of the pool where the assistant coach lifted him up and started mouth-to-mouth breathing. Everyone cleared the water. I ran to the guard shack to get my breathing mask, gashing my foot as I tripped and fell dodging patrons. The other guards jokingly go with, "Where's the fire?" I said there was a drowning and they looked totally bewildered. The assistant coach had successfully performed mouth-to-mouth as the paramedics arrived. Other than the boy drowning, the reactions and obliviousness of everyone at the pool was also scary. None of the other guards saw the kid at the bottom, no other swimmers saw him, the guards in the shack had no idea what was going on. His 13-year-old sister was there watching him instead of the parents, and out of adrenaline, I picked the child up incorrectly. He could have had a neck injury, and the way I picked him up could have paralyzed him. What scared me the most was the boy's reaction when he gained consciousness. He spat up water, stared straight up totally calm looking, and then just started screaming hysterically and running around the pool. I spent the next 2 hours sitting in a chair just staring at the ground in the guard shack. I felt like he died and had seen nothing. I went to a pond with 2 friends of mine after dark. The pond is about 200 feet off of a main road, and you have to walk down a gravel driveway to get to it. Important detail, there are no houses neighboring the pond. Anyways, we are standing at the dock in total darkness and we hear a small splash in the water. Small enough that I thought it was a fish jumping out of the water. A few seconds go by, and a louder splash takes place closer to us. At this point we thought someone had thrown a rock. "Hello?" I called out into the dark, only to get no answer. We are trying to scan the sides of the pond to see if anyone is there, but it was too dark. Suddenly, a huge splash came right near us, clear that someone had just hurled a rock into the water about 10 feet in front of us. It was easy to tell that this was a 10-plus pound rock. I yelled, "Okay, we are leaving." Into the dark and we hightailed it out of there. It was really weird and I never went back at night. Weirdest part of this is that the only clear space to stand is on the docks or on a small area of grass immediately to our left, which means someone was hiding in a bunch of tall reeds being creepy with us. My party once encountered a gazebo. I was the only survivor. Our DM was an asshole throwing a mythical creature at a low-level party. I was snorkeling for the first time in the Cayman Islands, 7 years/0. I had already seen a shark, which didn't scare me too badly at first. My parents got out and I stayed close to the pier we were snorkeling from. The water was still about 15 feet deep, and to get out you had to climb up these wooden steps with all sorts of gross stuff. I'm just snorkeling having a good time, but then a guy just started throwing bread in the water near me. Like, at me. Trying to get the fish to bite me. They did. I started bleeding a bunch and freaking out because I thought the shark was gonna come attack me. When I tried to get out, I slipped and fell back in the water. Finally made it out, but the entire time I was just waiting to get bitten by a great white. It was getting dark. I was maybe about 7 or 8 years old when I was on my way through the woods to our family cottage. I was running a bit ahead of the rest of my family since I wanted to get there first, usually a 2 minutes walk, so they let me run ahead. About 2/3 rds of the way and I encountered this humongous bird, roughly 2.5 feet tall, with red eyes staring at me. Felt like he was bigger than me. Little me froze in front of what I thought was a real-life Furo. I loved Pokemon. Only 5 feet away from me, it began shaking its body and making horrendous clicking sounds. Wings came out and it charged at me. I screamed like a girl and retreated back to my family with tears streaming down my face. I walked with them to our cottage, holding my mom's warm hand. Turned out it was a wood grouse, and it was mating season. When I was 5, I was outside with my mother while she was gardening. Out of nowhere a strange car pulls up and walks up towards her. She was already suspicious cause he was driving up and down the street looking over at us. Once he started walking towards us, my mom put me inside. The only thing the man kept saying to her was, "Where's your son? Go get your son," he kept asking her until he gets fed up and smacks her and leaves. I didn't understand at the time, but as I got older the reality of the situation hit me. I was walking home from the bus that dropped kids off after drama or sports at the nearby elementary school. This was 7th grade and I was listening to the live recording of Godzilla by Blue Oyster Cult on my MP3 player. So my neighborhood is quiet, mostly filled with retired folk, and we all have large yards. I had walked that road home many times and my house was right in sight when this occurred. A green Subaru Outback stopped next to me and I almost didn't notice until the door flew open and a slightly obese woman sprung from the car. She latched onto my arm and tried her best to yank me into the car with her. To her dismay, I was a ranked martial artist and kicked that bimbo in the face. When she let go, I bolted the opposite direction of my house. I didn't want her to know where I lived. No one was home at my house and I knew that. I took out my cell phone, but it was one of those dingy track phones and was dead. So I spent the next half hour or so ducking behind houses and making my way around the other way back to my house. The car would occasionally drive slowly by, looking for me. Needless to say, I can't really listen to that song anymore. In a bar when a group of pagans rolled in. Got a little loud and rowdy, they basically took over the place, sat at tables already taken, stand right up against you without saying a word. Straight up intimidation. Got up to leave and was mid-blocked and asked what the problem was. "Why are you leaving?" I didn't say a word and slipped by when a fight broke out at the other end of the room. Pretty dicey. So this is the story of a mysterious key, Waldo, and a gaggle of middle school students. In middle school we went on a trip to Washington, D.C. It was fantastic, quite a difference from Oregon. The malls especially. We were in a really nice mall eating in the food court when I saw 2 very darkly dressed men standing near the elevator and under the stairs. It's been years, but they said something along the lines of, "The key to the thing at the place with the stuff is under one of the chairs here. It has a broken hairband attached to it." I just thought it was weird as they walked away, but later when I pushed my chair in, my heart stopped. Sitting on the floor was a shiny silver key with a broken hair tie attached. My friends were already walking away, so I couldn't say anything to them. I did the stupid thing and picked up the key. I waited until we were on the bus to tell them what happened. My friend's boyfriend bravely offered to hold onto the key and tied it to his shoe. A day or so later we were walking around DC and noticed this guy dressed up as Waldo from Where's Waldo? Didn't think on it much until he started following us. Terrified, we stuck close to our group. I didn't have the heart to tell my friends that, as we were walking around that day, I saw him talking to the 2 darkly dressed men from the mall. A few days later we were at Busch Gardens, an amusement park, and it was pretty deserted. So this place was a few hours away from where we were staying before. I think we actually drove most of the night to get there. So I suppose you can imagine my horror when I saw Waldo there. He followed my group loosely the entire time, getting on every single ride that we did. It was absolutely terrifying and we weren't sure if we could tell our teacher. And if we did, if she'd even believe us. I saw him talking to those 2 darkly dressed men there, too. That's when I told my group and the boy who was holding the key got an idea. We waked into sight of the 2 men and Waldo across the food area of a building, and the boy took the key from his shoe. He then, in the most convincing manner, pretended to swallow it. He held it in his mouth for an hour as they continued to follow us as to not alert them to the fact that it was faked. They eventually stopped following us. We thought we were safe, but the boy continued to hold on to the key. It had become pretty funny to us by the end of the trip until the return flight when Waldo was on our plane. We never saw him again. The boy still has the key. And to this very day, 5 years later, I am terrified that something will happen to the boy in possession of the key. Got to the top of a cliff and saw a nasty thunderstorm far down the river. The river was between 2 equal-sized cliffs, and I decided I could climb down, cross the river, and climb up a cliff on the other side before the storm got there. When I get to the river, gnarly lightning is striking everywhere. I get electrocuted 3 times crossing the river. I slipped on a rock, and as my hand touches the water, A bright light cracks and electricity goes up one arm and out the other. And that wasn't the worst part. Now I am stuck on the other side and the only way up is a 10-story all-metal staircase. I'm so scared at this point that I just ran up it and hoped for the best. The dumbest thing I've ever done, but not by much. You do a lot of stupid shit in your 20s. I was pumping gas late night, around 1:30ish am. Two dudes came out from behind a dumpster and run up on me. First guy pulls a shotgun to my face and cocks it. I don't even hesitate to give them the money. They ran off just as quick as they ran in on me. I look over at the cashier who has a window to see outside, only to see him put his head down as if he didn't just see what happened. Had been at an all-night rave. The next morning the guy giving us a lift back decided he wanted to take a look around an old Victorian mental asylum that had been closed down for a few years, UK. That was creepy enough, but as we were looking round the rabbit warren we realized that someone was sleeping there in one of offices. We then heard noises so noped out of there. We managed to get back to the car and was driving out via the main entrance. We got in around the side. A bloke jumped out at the car with the biggest monkey wrench I have ever seen. My mate wound down the window to him leaning and asking if we had been messing with his kids. We blagged it that there were other people round the back and we got lost. Could have been the fact we was on a come down, but that guy still pops up in a few dreams over 20 years on. I was free diving and spearfishing on a wreck in about 30 of water. I was trying to squeeze into a tight space to look for fish and got stuck. I had put my arms above my head in order to get into the hole, and when I tried to back out my elbows spread out and wedged me in the hole. 30 down, running out of air. When I was maybe 7 or 8, I lived in Compton, California. We had a small garage that was at the end of a closed alleyway. My cousins, brother and I would go out and play soccer or ride bikes down the alley when we could, which were kept inside our tiny garage. One day, we went to get the bikes out of the garage and a black SUV that looked like an Explorer suddenly sped down the alley and skidded to a stop in front of our open garage. In what I think was an attempt at blocking our view of what happened next, they threw a bald guy out of the car, and 5 more bald Latino men in white t-shirts and jeans or jean shorts came out and started beating and kicking the guy on the floor. One guy stood guard in front of the SUV while this was going on, failing to notice us. I told my younger cousins and brother to run inside as I shut the garage door, using a tied string, and took off running into our apartment complex. They were single floor, all in lines and gated, to hide. The guy standing guard saw us when we took off, but no one followed us as far as I know. One of the scariest things I've ever seen as a kid. Last summer me and my friends decided to go to this abandoned army base that we had heard of but never bothered to visit. In order to get to it you have to walk to and cross a river, then walk uphill through a woodland for about 15 minutes, so it was quite far from where we would usually hang about. After the uphill trek we came to a field that had several stone, crumbling compounds, each with tunnels connecting each one together. We explored the first half of the tunnels and just messed around until we came to a clearing. This was where it got weird. There was a single baler of hay just sitting burning away with no sign of anybody around. By this time it had got really dark and it had begun to feel like one of those someone is watching moments. Out of nowhere we began to see flashing lights coming from the forest that seemed to be signaling each other. To say the least, we shat ourselves and started running back through the passages to the woods we came out of. When we looked back from the cover of the woods a hooded figure came running out of the tunnels, scouring the place for us with a sharpened stick. Went down to Kensington to pick up a few pairs of rare Nikes that fell off the truck. I was in a bright red Camaro blasting my subs in an unfamiliar neighborhood. Turns out it was not the kind of neighborhood you wanted a red car in. Got chased down by 2 blue SUVs, looked to be older GMCs. Being a white kid from a nice neighborhood, I hightailed it out of there and they gave chase, flashing their brights and honking their horns. I blew stop signs and red lights, they stayed right on me. I lost them on 202. Walked around a rock pile and almost smacked into a moose's ass. I just turned its head and stared at me with its huge evil yellow eyes. I was so close I could have touched it. I wouldn't have been worried if I didn't have a dog with me. Moose hate dogs and will stomp them to death at the slightest provocation, but I backed away slow and it didn't get spooked. It was cool but terrifying. However, I was a lot more afraid when I was flying in a glider for the first time. I had never been up in a small aircraft, let alone a towed glider. It was cool but the landing was unnerving. You feel like you're pointed 90 degrees to the deck. Out for a random walk on a paved trail that winds through the woods. I had headphones in but no music playing, mainly to avoid social interaction. I heard a crash through the trees behind me, and when I turned around I was in a staring contest with a huge buck. After a few seconds he turned and ran back into the woods, and when I couldn't hear him anymore I booked it back to my car. Nobody I tell believes me. I went to Myrtle Beach with my family when I was 14 and some guy asked me if I wanted some weed. We walked beside a hotel and he said to give him my wallet and I said no. He asked if I wanted to die for it and I said no, but I'm not giving it to you either. He said he was keeping the $20 I had given him for the weed and I said okay, then he left. I guess I should have just given it to him, but hey, he didn't get my $300 and didn't kill me. So my advice is to maybe not try to buy weed from random guys in alleys. When I was around 9 years old, I watched my dad push dirt around with a little lawn tractor with a plow on it. My neighbor was bringing dirt over in a dump truck, expanding our backyard. My dad was backing up, underestimated how close he was to the sharply declining hill and almost went over. I don't know how I would feel if I watched him tumble down a 20-foot drop on a tractor, because it scared the shit out of me for weeks. On my way to work I have to cross an ungated railroad crossing. This morning a train was stopped on the near rail just clearing the crossing. I hesitated for a few seconds and then started to cross just as a train came on the far rail. I was 10 feet from getting creamed. Why the second train didn't feel the need to blow its horn at an unprotected crossing while there was a stationary train setting off the signal is beyond me. One time my friend and I were walking along a road which was pretty wooded on both sides. It's a semi-busy road. About half-mile away from the store, this minivan pulls up next to us with the doors open and older man, 40-50s, starts screaming at us to get in. He keeps yelling and I start running the opposite way the car was facing. My friend was scared and almost got in, but luckily another car started coming and he drove off. Absolutely terrifying. I used to live in the country, outside of a small town. There was this marsh area near a dam a short walk from my house. That marsh had a pretty shitty road, often used as a shortcut, but not really worth it because the rocks would mess up your vehicle and arguably it took just as long as the normal way, but it's some nice scenery, so I enjoyed walking along that road. Anyway, there I am walking down the road, enjoying the view, just enjoying summer in general. I'm about a mile away from my home at this point, and about 2/3 of a mile away from any other building. It's at this time that a truck comes up from behind me, while I didn't even know was coming because I was listening to music, so that just adds to my surprise. The truck had a red body with a blue roof, or maybe it was the opposite, but it looked like it was from 1960 or some shit, so there's this sketchy looking truck, with even sketchier looking people inside. They were bearded and dirty looking. They asked what I was doing all the way out there, and the way they were talking just really put me off, but I told them I was just out for a walk. They kinda laughed and asked if I wanted a ride. Nope, no thank you. They accept my polite refusal, laugh a bit more and drive off. Once there was nothing left but a trail of dust, I turned around and walked back home pretty fast. I never saw those people again, and only saw the vehicle once more, parked somewhere. I honestly felt way too close to being murdered or butt raped or something. But who knows, they could have very well been nice guys. I was made to climb into the back of a refrigerated meat truck behind Walmart. Instructed to lay down behind some boxes of sausage and wait to see what happened. Two guys came up to the truck and were using a box cutter to open the boxes between us. Not just by slicing open the tape, but stabbing it down first into the box where the seal is. I tried to stay still and not make myself known, but that sense of terror as they approached closer and closer, stabbing each box, led me to get up. I just acted like I was confused or crazy, but we all knew what was going on. They called the police, who just warned me to get out of their jurisdiction and left me to walk away. One time I was in a car with my mom. We were driving down the street until we got caught up in traffic. There was a long lineup of cars and we weren't moving. Craning her head out the window, my mom said, "I wonder what's going on up there," and I said, "Someone died, Mom." She replied, "How do you know? Can you see something up there?" I said, "No Mom, he's standing right next to me." If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.